Ice Age: The Meltdown. Back in the early 2000s, before the days when the sequels were like a cinematic infestation, Ice Age was considered to be something good and enjoyable. When the first movie came out back in 2002, critics and audiences had a lot of fun joining in the adventures of Sid, Manny, Diego, and Scrat. So much so that it even got an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature. It proved to be a great start for Blue Sky as a potential animation studio, as it was also a major hit at the box office and helped computer animation to be the new standard in mainstream animated films. So naturally, an encore with these characters was inevitable to make Ice Age not just their first movie, but also their first major franchise. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with making an Ice Age sequel other than turning it into an addiction that the moviegoers had to suffer through more than a decade? But now that climate change is even affecting the Ice Age, is the love for the franchise still as strong as Manny's for Ellie? Or did the franchise's meltdown begin in their second film? Let's find out. The story. In the first movie, it revealed the heartbreaking backstory of Manny, where his family got killed by hunters and left him to grow up all on his own, possibly making him the only one of his kind. This was apparently enough to make him the main focus of the second film, where he finds out that maybe he's not the only mammoth left, all while everyone is in danger as a flood threatens to destroy the land they live in. While I give it credit that it does balance both plots of Manny in love and trying to escape the flood pretty well, the biggest downside is that both stories are equally weak. You got one where it's the typical rom-com story where Manny meets a girl and while they resent each other at first, they gradually fall in love while facing some ups and downs. While the other is the escape to survive plot where the characters have to move out in order to avoid a disaster, but have to confront it in the end anyways. While some may argue that we all know that the characters will be okay in the end because they all later appear in the follow-ups, it doesn't change how the stories here are still easily predictable and still have to rely on fillers to extend the time of this feature. Seriously, it's noticeable when it doesn't know what to do to progress the plot. The movie either adds a scene where Scrat is chasing his acorn or makes something up on the spot. Like, let's put some vultures here to make things interesting. Okay, what are they gonna do? A musical number. However, as it is a comedy, the film also prioritizes the humor to use it as its main hook to entertain its audiences. In the first sequel, the gags are honestly not that strong. While it tries to deliver a large amount of jokes, mostly slapstick, they mostly fall flat, and the ones that are effective only get a little chuckle at best. Granted, it can get an actual laugh with either Manny's cynical remarks or Scrat's classic cartoon-style chase to get his acorn. I know I just stated that his scenes are pointless, but I'll give that one a pass because Scrat does supply the most entertaining parts of the film. Maybe it's not the worst adventure that the gang had to go through, but it definitely is one of their most dull and predictable stories. The animation. If there is one thing to admire from this film, it's how it upgraded its animation compared to its predecessor. While it is explainable that the first movie was released in 2002, where the technology was quite limited in terms of producing computer animation, it still doesn't change how its looks have become a bit dated. In the sequel, there is a noticeable improvement in both the quality and the amount of detail that was put into it. I will say right now, though, that there are some elements that could have still used a bit of work, including the effects like the splashing water, or even the backgrounds where they did show more of nature thanks to the melting ice, but the area still isn't really a fascinating place to look at where it's mostly covered in white. But again, it's still an improvement from before. So with that out of the way, let's get into the actual good stuff. When looking at how it handled the characters, their designs still stay true to how they looked before, but now the textures are a lot clearer where their fur or their skin feel more organic and natural than before. Also, it goes without saying that the animators really do play a lot with the character animation to make them as lively as possible, and to take advantage on the squash and stretch to sell on the comedy. The most prominent of these moments is from the scenes with Scrat. On top of that, when adding new features, the movie doesn't hold back to trying all sorts of new things, including having a whole bunch of new creatures with their own unique look and style of movement. But while the animators did work on creating a lot of slapstick moments for laughs, they also had their hands on making some action scenes to put the gang in peril. While some aren't that strong of a moment, mostly due to the writing than the visuals, I'll give it credit that the dangling rock scene was a good highlight of the movie to capture the life-threatening intensity of the moment. I'm not gonna go as far and say that this is the best animation produced by Blue Sky, but I will say that the best thing about this sequel is how it visually improved from the first film. The characters. Believe it or not, there was a time when people actually got excited to hear that characters like Sid, Manny, and Diego would come back to the big screen. And when the Meltdown was announced, it was a pretty anticipated moment for many to see their return after their first fun-filled adventure. So was seeing them again worth it? Well, yes and no. They're not greatly executed, but they're also not terrible characters either. You got Sid, who's mostly delivering a lot of his usual goofball comedy, Diego tries to conquer his fear of water, and there's Manny, the central figure of the picture who fights his loneliness by becoming the typical lover that's getting into a relationship with the first girl mammoth he met in years. Speaking of which, let's start the new characters with Ellie, a mammoth who was adopted by possums who now believe she is one, and not only starts a spark with Manny, but also learns a lot more about who she truly is. Outside of the possum gimmick, she's not really interesting as a character, and only serves as Manny's potential love interest where the connection can get a few bumps on the road, but it will eventually happen. There is also her brothers, Crash and Eddie, whom right when they first appear on screen, they get annoying fast. They're meant as the main new comic reliefs, but their jokes constantly fail because they always rely on the punchline of how stupid they are. In fact, they actually make Sid redeemable in this film because the duo can be used as a comparable example as to how he could have been worse.
That was the bravest thing I've ever seen.
It was nothing really.
Oh, it's not a compliment. To a possum, bravery is just dumb.
Yeah, we're spineless.
Lily-livered.
Another new character that pops in from time to time is Fast Tony, who's just the generic scamming salesman that's only meant to supply more gags. My only comment on him is that you know when an Ice Age character is bad when they don't get a chance to appear in any of the other sequels afterwards. And then there's Scrat. Like I said before, he supplies some of the funniest moments of the film despite his involvement having little to no connection to the actual movie itself. While some may fault his pointless addition, at least he does a better job at entertaining the viewers than most of the movie. While the new ones fail to add something worthwhile to the Ice Age franchise, at least seeing the recurring characters again was something. Well, I can't say that this was the warning of what would be to come, since this ultimately is just a harmless sequel. Ice Age: The Meltdown is a downgrade from the original 2002 movie, but not too much to make this a bad film. While it does suffer from poor writing that delivers a weak story and characters that can range from okay to annoying, it does contain some substance with improved animation and some moments that can give people a laugh. While I think it's not a necessary watch, as the first is debatably the only one worth seeing, I recommend this movie more for those who love the first film. I mean, like those who can't get enough of Ice Age. At the very least, this will satisfy some of their Ice Age needs. Outside of that, it can be served well as a 90-minute kid distractor, so it can be used for something. As Ice Age sequels go, this one is like Sid in the movie. Far from great or even enjoyable, but I'll take him any day compared to some of the other sequels that are more like Crash and Eddie. Hey guys, this is AniMat, and I want to start things off by giving out a huge thanks to Brandon Ferretti, whose amazing support on Patreon allowed him to get some amazing rewards, including this one, where he got to go and ask me to review Ice Age: The Meltdown. And the funny thing about Ice Age: The Meltdown is that I would consider it the middle place of all the Ice Age films. Like, if there was someone out there who would go and ask me to go and rank every single Ice Age movie from best to worst, then I would say that Ice Age: The Meltdown, Ice Age 2, is just right dab in the middle between the best ones and the worst ones. Where among them, I would say, of course, the best, the number one of them all, hands down, the first Ice Age movie, and debatably the only one that's actually worth watching. But then there's also second place, and that one could be debatable for me because I'll be honest, it's been years since I've actually seen this one, but I would probably say second place would be Ice Age: Dawn of the Dinosaurs. Now, maybe that could actually change in the future where one day I would actually go and review it and maybe I might not think it's as good as I thought, but I do recall all those years ago when I did see that film, I find it to be actually pretty good, pretty decent, and more enjoyable than most of the sequels that I've seen from Ice Age, so that's why I would put it second place. But one thing is for certain, at least with The Meltdown, is that it's definitely way better than the other Ice Age sequels, or the later ones, where it's way better than Continental Drift, mainly because Continental Drift, let's be honest, is just a ripoff of The Meltdown, except you just throw in pirates for some reason. And it is most certainly better than the worst of them all, Collision Course. The fifth one that pretty much went too far and made everyone say, okay, that's it, enough with the Ice Age films. And it really does show why people are getting sick and tired as to why nobody wants any more Ice Age sequels. I don't think even Blue Sky wanted any more Ice Age sequels when they were making Collision Course. So, among all of them, yes, as I've stated, and as you've probably seen from my reviews overall, or at least so far, because as of this review, I have yet to do the third one, but the point is, Ice Age 2 is definitely my middle place movie. Not the best Ice Age film, but at the same time, not the worst Ice Age film. But then again, this is coming from a guy who thinks that only the first one is actually worth watching. Okay, so with that said, it is now time that we shall quit Ice Age. We'll move on from that for now, and we are going to go to a special review, and this is not from a request from Patreon, but this is actually a request from you guys. In fact, it is the most requested review for me to go and review on AniMat's Classic Reviews. So before I get things started, I would just like to go and say that if you guys would like to be like Brandon and you want to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards at the same time, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat, but at the same time, if you guys would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. So, what is it that I'm talking about regarding the most requested review for me to do? What am I talking about? Well, at this point, it's going to require a lot of little context here. Because the thing is, as of this review, my YouTube channel just recently hit over 100,000 subscribers. A huge milestone. And I decided to go and celebrate this by letting my audience, you guys, to go and pick which animated film you would like me to do the most. I did a little bit of a poll among the 10 most requested animated films that you guys have been asking me throughout the years, and you guys would go and select which one you would like to see. And trust me, this was not an easy decision because the results ended up becoming extremely diverse. But even with all that, I will say that we finally managed to get one winner. So, here's the results. Out of over 2,500 voters, out of 2,500 different votes among the entire list, this winner actually managed to get around 22% of the votes. So it's not really that many, and it is less than a quarter, but that's the magic number that it managed to win with. And with this winner, the only thing I can ask for you guys regarding the most requested review, are you ready, kids?
Story time's over. The end.